verse 3. Now in verse 4, Abraham said, thou shalt go to my country, to my kindred, and take a wife unto my son. Number one, he told Eliezer where not to take a wife from in verse 3, and in verse 4 he told him where exactly to take a wife from for Isaac. And he says that he will go to his country, his kindred, his family. So there were specifications as to where the wife should come from. So the question we want to ask about, and that's another way of Isaac, you don't marry from outside your country. Yes, you don't marry from outside your family. If you want to marry, you marry your family, you marry your sister, you marry your relative. Now, I'm sure a lot of people will be startled by that statement, but I'm not saying that if you're a Nigerian now, you don't marry someone from Ghana. Because if you still think that you are a Ghanaian before you think that you are a Christian, it shows that you are not very spiritually literate. You are first a Christian before you are a Nigerian. You're first a Christian before you are a Ghanaian. So when we talk about your nationality, we're not talking about Ghana, Canadian, or America. We are talking about the fact that you are a believer, you are in Christ. So your country is in Christ. Your family is also in Christ. So this thing that Abraham told Eliezer in verse 4 of Genesis, if we are to transport it into the New Testament, he will say, do not yoke my son unequally with an unbeliever. Any man that is in Christ to an extent is your countryman. You have the same nationality in the spirit and the same citizenship. Is your countryman, is your countrywoman, is your family, is your relative, is your brother, and is your sister. We all are brethren. That is not to say that you shouldn't have some considerations as to human cultural differences. For instance, if you're a Nigerian, you want to marry an Afghanistan Christian, you have to ask yourself certain questions. Even though you are spiritually the same, you belong to the same city, right? You are citizens of the same country spiritually. You really need to also understand that you have to consider their natural cultural undertones. But those should not be the major factor that you're going to consider. You may need to consider them. But the most important thing that you need to consider, and how we're going to interpret this verse 4 of Genesis 24 in the New Testament, is that the person must be born again. The person must be a Christian. If he is born again, is your country, is your fellow countryman. If he's born again, is your family member. You are both members of the same family and of the same household of faith. So that's the second thing that we see about the way of Isaac.